You didn't stumble here. You were pulled. The timing, the title, even the way your attention paused long enough to let these words enter, none of it is random. You already know that. Some part of you has been waiting for this exact moment, that subtle but unmistakable sense of recognition. It isn't chance, it's resonance. It's life whispering. Now, notice this, you've felt it before, a nudge, a pulse, a tiny shiver running through your day when the ordinary briefly cracked open to reveal something more. Maybe it was a repeated number flashing on the clock. Maybe it was a conversation that landed with uncanny precision. Or maybe it was just the way the air felt charged for no reason you could explain. You didn't imagine those moments. You recognized them, and recognition is always the first stage of activation. Think about what it means for a message to find you instead of you finding it. That's the universe's way of showing you you're no longer searching blindly. You're magnetized. A message like this doesn't float toward everyone's awareness. It filters, it selects, it waits for consciousness that's ready to pick up its signal. The fact that you're here right now is evidence you've crossed into that category. You've become the kind of receiver who notices what others scroll past. Consider how the threshold feels. It's not dramatic on the outside, no thunder, no lightning bolt, but inside, something shifts. You can sense it in your chest, like a pressure that's not quite heavy but undeniable. You breathe differently when truth brushes against you. It's not just information landing in your mind, it's energy announcing itself in your body. And thresholds are always felt before they're understood. Now feel the difference when you allow that recognition to sink in. For years, you may have thought you were just too sensitive or overthinking. But in reality, every small moment where you noticed alignment was proof you were being trained. You were learning how to pick up the subtle cues of a higher signal. That signal wasn't random noise. It was the scaffolding of a larger design, waiting until you could step through it consciously. The interesting part is how it escalates. At first, recognition feels like a coincidence. Then it becomes a pattern. Eventually, it transforms into a directive. You begin to realize the universe isn't just showing you signs, it's shaping you through them. And the threshold you feel right now is when the shaping becomes intentional. No more vague nudges. This is direct contact. Here's the paradox: thresholds often disguise themselves as confusion. You might feel suspended, like you're caught between an old identity that no longer fits and a new one that hasn't fully landed. That's not weakness, that's proof of transition. It's the exact space where activation occurs, the place between endings and beginnings, where the old dissolves but the new hasn't hardened into form. You're in the liminal zone, and liminal zones are sacred. Imagine instead that life is less like a straight line and more like a series of doors. Most of the time, you're walking through hallways, familiar and repetitive, but every so often you encounter a doorway with an energy you can't ignore. This message is one of those doorways. You can keep walking past it, pretending it's just another hallway. Or you can pause, touch the handle, and admit that you're ready to step through. Either way, the doorway exists. The difference is whether you claim it. This is the mechanics of thresholds. Recognition is the spark. Activation is the step. Until you act, it remains potential. Once you act, even in small internal ways, the entire field around you begins to reorganize. The very moment you decide to stop dismissing your recognition as imagination, your frequency sharpens. You're not waiting for permission. You're broadcasting. That's why this message arrived here, now. It's a mirror showing you who you've already become. And here's what nobody tells you: crossing a threshold doesn't mean you have everything figured out. It doesn't mean you suddenly feel invincible or certain about every detail of your future. What it does mean is that you've stopped identifying with the old vibration of doubt. You can still feel fear, But you no longer confuse fear with truth. You can still notice uncertainty, but you no longer let uncertainty paralyze you. You step anyway. That's activation. That's the shift. So the next move is simple. Admit that you're not who you were even a season ago. Admit that what once felt like fantasy now feels like inevitability. Admit that you've been waiting for confirmation, and that confirmation has finally arrived. Let that honesty open the doorway wider, because once you declare that you recognize this moment for what it is, a threshold the universe rushes to meet you on the other side. Recognition isn't small. Recognition is everything. It's the seed of transformation, the spark of alignment, the whisper of destiny. And now that you've recognized it, the threshold has become unavoidable. You are here, the door is open. Step through. You've crossed into a new awareness, and now the question emerges, how do you know when the universe is actually speaking to you? The answer is signals, not random sparks of coincidence, not flukes you should dismiss, but patterns that recur with a precision too sharp to ignore. These signals are your evidence that you are not wandering blindly. You're tuned in. Notice this signals arrive the way radio frequencies do. The music was always playing, but until you twisted the dial to the right station, all you heard was static. The numbers, the symbols, the synchronicities you've been catching aren't new. They were always broadcasting. What changed is that your inner receiver has become sensitive enough to register the rhythm underneath the noise. What once felt like accident is now audible truth. Think back to the times you caught repeating numbers on clocks or license plates, almost mocking in their insistence. Think about that person you ran into at the exact moment you were thinking about them. These moments aren't cosmic jokes. They're feedback. They're the field saying, yes, you're aligned. Yes, you're listening. Every signal is a confirmation that your consciousness and the larger frequency of reality are intersecting. Consider how most people treat signals. They shrug them off, label them coincidence, move on without pause. That's because their receivers are clouded. They've trained themselves to stay on channels of doubt and distraction. But when your station clears and the static quiets, you can't unhear the song. You feel it in your skin. That's what's happening to you now. You're not learning to believe in magic. You're learning to interpret mechanics. Now feel the difference between signal and noise. Noise is everything that tries to pull your attention in 1,000 directions, draining your energy until you forget what you were looking for. Signal is precise. It strikes at your gut before your brain even catches up. You don't have to debate whether it matters. You know, the way you know. When a song suddenly fits your mood perfectly, that resonance is the clue. Here's the practice when a signal arrives. Pause. Don't scroll past. Don't dismiss. Don't demand proof. Breathe. Ask silently, what am I being shown? Often the answer won't arrive in words. It'll arrive in a sensation, a lightness, a heaviness, a pull toward or away. Signals speak in energy before they translate into language. The more you honor that language, the clearer it becomes. Imagine instead of begging the universe for answers, you start treating your entire day like a signal map. That overheard phrase, that sudden delay that kept you from being at the wrong place at the wrong time, that dream you couldn't shake the next morning, these are frequencies brushing against you. When you start cataloging them with respect, you begin to notice the pattern weaving through them. That pattern is not random, it's navigation. Here's the mechanics. Your attention is like an antenna, extending into the field of possibility. Whatever you focus on most consistently, your antenna tunes to. If you focus on fear, you amplify signals that confirm danger. If you focus on trust, you amplify signals that confirm alignment. The universe doesn't punish or reward. It reflects. It simply returns the frequency you broadcast. And signals are the feedback loop showing you how clear your transmission is. When you apply that, you begin to see why certain opportunities appear when they do. It's not luck, it's resonance. Your energy became a match, and the external world reorganized accordingly. The signal wasn't pointing to something outside you, it was mirroring the broadcast coming from within you. This is why chasing signals never works. You don't need to hunt for them. You need to broadcast cleanly, and they arrive. So the next move is simple treat signals like sacred confirmations, not curiosities. Keep a record. Write down the repeating themes, the recurring images, the words that won't leave you. Over time, you'll notice the pattern sharpening. That pattern is your personal guidance system. It's not superstition. It's how consciousness navigates itself in a multi-dimensional field. Signals aren't there to entertain you. They're there to remind you you're not wandering. You're being guided, and the more you trust that, the more fluent you become in the language of frequency. Soon, what once felt mysterious becomes obvious. The song has been playing all along. Now you're listening. You've learned to notice the signals, and now the next step is this understanding what they're really pointing to. Most people are taught to think of life like a game of attraction. Work hard enough, want it badly enough, visualize it long enough, and maybe, eventually, it will be pulled toward you. But here's the truth. Attraction is the wrong frame. What you're experiencing isn't attraction, it's alignment. Notice this: when you turn a radio to 98.3, you don't attract the station. You align with it. The broadcast was always there, filling the room invisibly, waiting for your dial to meet its frequency. The same is true with your desires. You don't drag them across space and time. You adjust your vibration until you land on their channel. Suddenly, what seemed far away floods into the room because you're tuned correctly. Think about how exhausting the attraction mindset really is. It makes you feel like what you want lives out there, at a distance, always one more vision board away. You strain, you beg, you wait. You imagine the universe as reluctant, holding back until you've earned enough points. And when it doesn't show up fast enough, you think you failed. That's why so many people get stuck in cycles of disappointment. They're pulling when they should be tuning. Consider how alignment feels different. Alignment doesn't strain, it relaxes. When your inner frequency matches the reality you've been envisioning, you don't feel desperate, you feel certain. It's like the click of a lock opening, natural, inevitable, undeniable. You're no longer trying to make something happen. You're discovering that it was already happening, and now you can finally hear it. Now feel the difference attraction keeps you reaching. Alignment keeps you receiving. Attraction feels like stretching out your hand into a distance that never closes. Alignment feels like standing still and letting the broadcast meet you. You've had those moments already, haven't you? Times when you stopped trying so hard, relaxed into your truth, and suddenly what you wanted slipped into your life without warning. That wasn't luck. That was frequency coherence. Here's the mechanics: the quantum field doesn't respond to requests. It responds to resonance. You can write affirmations all day long, but if your nervous system is broadcasting scarcity, the field reflects scarcity. You can beg for opportunities, but if your inner voice whispers unworthiness, the field mirrors unworthiness. The field doesn't judge. It simply echoes, which is why shifting your frequency matters more than any external effort. Imagine instead that your desires are already vibrating, calling, waiting. Every possibility exists like a station in the air. Wealth, love, peace, creativity, they're all broadcasting right now. When you hold yourself in the emotional state of already having them, you meet their channel. And in that moment, what you once called a dream becomes daily life. Here's a practice next time you catch yourself wanting something. Stop. Notice the gap that wanting creates. Then shift the language. Instead of "I want," try "I'm ready." Instead of "I need," try "I allow." Feel how your body reacts to that difference. Wanting tenses you. Allowing relaxes you. That's the signal of alignment. Your body is the most honest instrument you own. When you apply that consistently, life starts to respond faster. The job shows up. The person calls. The synchronicity aligns. Not because you attracted it from miles away, but because you finally cleared the static and heard what was already humming through your reality. And once you see this, you can never go back. You realize there was never a gap, only interference. So the next move is simple. Stop pulling, start tuning. Each time you catch yourself straining to get somewhere, pause, ask, what frequency am I actually broadcasting? If the answer is fear, shift. If the answer is lack, shift. Breathe into trust, gratitude, certainty. Let your inner station click into place, because when you do, the field doesn't have to be convinced. It has no choice but to respond. Attraction is effort. Alignment is inevitability. And inevitability is what happens when your being and your desires sing on the same channel. That's not magic, that's mechanics. You've seen how alignment works, and now it's time to understand why the path has included so many detours, delays, and disappointments. They weren't punishments, they were calibration. Notice this when a musician tunes their instrument. The sound isn't smooth at first. It wavers, bends, shrieks a little off-key. Only through tension, adjustment, and release does the string settle into harmony. Your life has been no different. Every heartbreak, every loss, every moment you thought you were slipping backwards was part of your frequency being tuned. The dissonance wasn't failure, it was preparation. Think about the chrysalis from the outside. It looks like destruction, a creature dissolving, its body breaking down into formless chaos. But within that chaos, imaginal cells are knitting together the wings of a butterfly. What seemed like death was reorganization. You've had your chrysalis seasons, the jobs that ended, the relationships that cracked apart, the plans that collapsed. They weren't erasing your future. They were dissolving the old structure so you could carry wings your previous self couldn't sustain. Now feel the steam metaphor. Water doesn't jump from liquid to vapor in one neat step. It shudders at the boiling point, bubbling violently, refusing to fit in either category. For a moment, it looks unstable. Then, suddenly, the molecules reorganize and the shift is permanent. That boiling sensation you've felt in your life lately, the pressure, the chaos, the moments where nothing seemed solid, that's not collapse. That's coherence, reorganizing itself at a higher octave. Consider how preparation shows itself in 3 distinct markers. First, repetition when lessons circle back again and again. It's not because you're cursed. It's because calibration requires reinforcement. The universe replays the note until it rings clear. Second, stripping away when things fall from your hands, no matter how tightly you grip. It's not cruelty. It's pruning. Only what resonates can travel forward with you. Third, endurance when waiting seasons stretch longer than you planned. It's not delay. It's density being burned away so your frequency can carry more light without fracturing. Here's the mechanics. Calibration ensures that when the new frequency arrives, it doesn't shatter you. Imagine plugging a tiny bulb into a city's entire power grid. It would explode. But upgrade the wiring, reinforce the circuits, and the same current illuminates a skyline. Your wiring has been under construction. Every stretch, every dark night, every unanswered question was strengthening your capacity to hold more power. You weren't being abandoned, you were being upgraded. Imagine instead that what you called failure was actually the universe saying, "This path is too small for you now." Like shoes that pinch once your feet have grown. Old situations couldn't contain the size of your emerging self. That discomfort, that friction, was proof you had outgrown what used to fit. Calibration feels painful only when you cling to what can no longer sustain you. Here's a practice next time something falls apart. Resist the urge to label it loss. Breathe and ask, what capacity is this building in me? Notice how the question itself shifts your state. Instead of spiraling into victimhood, you open into curiosity. That curiosity aligns you with the higher frequency hidden in the challenge. When you apply that mindset, you start to reinterpret your past. Betrayals become lessons in discernment. Failures become initiations into resilience. Delays become gestation periods for miracles that needed more time to ripen. Suddenly the story changes. You were never broken, you were being fine-tuned. So the next move is simple: embrace calibration as evidence of readiness. The next time life shakes loose what you thought you needed, don't panic. Hear the note being adjusted. Trust that chaos is simply the sound of coherence settling into a higher register, because once the string is tuned, the music it plays is unstoppable. Preparation isn't punishment. Preparation is proof you're being trusted with greater frequencies, and every stretch you've endured has already carved space for the power that's about to move through you. You've learned to see signals, and you've started to accept preparation as calibration. But here's a truth that changes everything. You are not walking alone. Your future self is already broadcasting back to you. Notice this: every inspired idea that arrives out of nowhere, every spark of clarity that lands in your mind at 3 a.m., every sudden surge of motivation that seems bigger than your current reality, those aren't random. That's your future self sending you transmissions. Just like a lighthouse guiding ships from miles away, the version of you who already lives in alignment is flashing signals through the fog. The fact that you even glimpse possibilities beyond your current circumstances is proof that the broadcast is live. Think about the last time you felt a sudden download of an idea so complete, so vivid. You wondered where it came from. You didn't invent it. You received it. That's how collaboration works across time. The higher dimensional version of you, unbound by linear sequence, drops breadcrumbs onto your path. It whispers through intuition, nudges through synchronicity, even arranges encounters that shift your trajectory. Every aha is a message. Every hunch is a handshake across timelines. Consider how this changes the way you view yourself. Instead of struggling forward, hoping to become worthy of your dreams, you realize you're in dialogue with the self who already made it. You're not waiting for them to arrive. They're waiting for you to tune in. And the tuning happens not through effort, but through resonance, living as if the gap is already closing. Now feel the difference when you stop begging for signs and start listening for instructions. Your future self isn't holding back blessings until you're perfect. They're coaching you step by step, lending you energy when you feel depleted, slipping courage into your chest when fear tries to paralyze you. That sudden calm in the middle of chaos, that was them. That surge of determination when you were ready to quit them again. You've been collaborating all along, whether you realized it or not. Here's the mechanics: linear time is an illusion of perspective. To your future self, everything is happening now. That means they can see the entire path between your present and their reality. They know which decisions accelerate your alignment and which slow it down. They know which opportunities to highlight and which doors to close. The signals you've been noticing are often their fingerprints on your timeline. Imagine instead of dismissing those nudges, you treat them as strategy. You get a sudden idea to call someone and the conversation opens a door. You feel an urge to rest instead of push, and that rest prevents burnout before a breakthrough. These aren't accidents. They're directives from the version of you who has already walked the road. Here's a practice. When an impulse arises that feels clean, clear, and light, act on it within 48 hours. Don't overthink. Don't wait for conditions to be perfect. That window is often the transmission still vibrating in your field. Delay too long and the static of doubt drowns it out. Acting quickly anchors the collaboration, strengthening the channel between you and the self who already knows. When you apply that practice, something remarkable happens. Life starts feeling less like pushing uphill and more like being guided downstream. Obstacles don't vanish, but solutions arrive faster. Doubt doesn't disappear, but trust speaks louder. The partnership becomes undeniable. You stop living as if you're clawing toward a future. You start living as if the future is coaching you home. So the next move is simple. Cultivate the relationship. Talk to your future self. Ask them for guidance in moments of confusion. Write down their answers in your journal, even if you think you're imagining it. Those words carry more wisdom than your current mind alone could generate. Over time, you'll realize that the wisdom is consistent, compassionate, and uncannily accurate. Your future self is not a fantasy. They are you, amplified. They are proof that alignment isn't only possible, it's inevitable. And the more you collaborate with them now, the faster the timeline between you collapses. You've seen how signals guide you and how your future self collaborates with you. But here's the crucial truth. None of it matters if your inner state doesn't match your outer desire. This is where embodiment comes in. This is where coherence is born. Notice this coherence isn't about repeating affirmations until you're blue in the face. It's not about performing hope or pretending you're confident while your body quietly disagrees. Coherence means every part of you, mind, heart, body, and spirit, vibrates in agreement. No split frequencies, no hidden contradictions, no yes on the surface with a no beneath. When you're coherent, the field can't help but respond. Think about your nervous system as the gatekeeper. You can say, "I am abundant," 1,000 times. But if your chest tightens and your breath shortens when you say it, your body is broadcasting lack. Words don't shape reality alone, your embodied state does. The universe reads your nervous system more clearly than it reads your vision board. That's why coherence is the most powerful practice you can master. Now feel the observer breath. Inhale deeply and exhale longer than the inhale. Do it 3 times. As you do, notice the subtle shift, the tension in your jaw softening, the space in your chest opening. This isn't relaxation for its own sake. It's alignment. Your breath is the tuning fork that brings scattered frequencies into harmony. Each time you choose to breathe consciously, you're collapsing noise into signal. Here's the mechanics. Coherence is physiological. It shows up in heart rate variability, in electromagnetic rhythm, in brainwave synchronization. But beyond science, it's experiential. You know you're coherent when the voice of doubt grows quiet, when your body feels like a safe place to live, when decisions feel clean instead of tangled. The state itself is the manifestation engine. Consider how often people try to manifest from incoherence. They push themselves to believe, but their stomach knots. They visualize success, but their body braces for disappointment. That's not manifestation, that's internal conflict. The field doesn't mirror your words, it mirrors your state. And incoherence simply reflects as delay, mixed results, or chaos. Imagine instead that you build rituals to check coherence daily. Before you send a message, pause. Ask your body, do I feel open or constricted before you make a decision? Notice, does my breath flow easily or catch in my throat? Your body is a compass. Ignore it, and you wander. Honor it, and you align. Here's a practice: stand still. Place your hand on your chest and speak a desire aloud. Listen. If your body feels heavier, you're not coherent. If your body feels lighter, you are. Don't judge the heaviness, use it as guidance. It means there's a piece of your system that needs reassurance or recalibration. Sometimes it's as simple as adjusting the language. Instead of "I will," try "I am ready." Instead of "someday," try "now." The nervous system responds to phrasing more honestly than the mind does. When you apply that practice, you start noticing a shift. Your words feel less like performances and more like declarations. Your choices stop carrying the weight of obligation and start carrying the ease of inevitability. People feel the difference too. They can sense when your energy is congruent, even if they don't have language for it. Coherence is magnetic. It pulls without force. So the next move is simple. Stop chasing outcomes and start cultivating states. If your inner world is incoherent, no external prize will stabilize you. But if your inner world is coherent, external results naturally align. Every breath, every word, every small act becomes a vote for resonance. And those votes compound until the field has no choice but to mirror your coherence. Embodied coherence is the bridge between knowing and becoming. It's what transforms signals into results, visions into realities, whispers into solid ground. And once you taste it, you'll realize the body was never the obstacle. It was the instrument, waiting to be tuned. You've been learning to breathe coherence into your body, and now you may notice something strange happening around you. The people, places, and roles that once felt comfortable begin to loosen. Some drift away, others push back. Why? Because when your frequency shifts, your relationships shift too. Notice this identity is relational. Who you thought you were was partly built by the mirrors of those around you. Family, friends, colleagues, even passing acquaintances, they reflected an image of you back. And you lived inside that reflection. But now, as your frequency rises, some mirrors can't reflect your light accurately anymore. They distort or they shatter, and it feels like loss. But really, it's resonance adjusting. Think about the times you felt strangely out of sync in rooms you used to fit. Conversations that once sparked now feel dull. Jokes that once landed now fall flat. It's not because you became superior, it's because you became different. Like a musician who no longer plays in the same key. Your sound has changed. And unless others tune with you, dissonance appears. Consider how vibrational compatibility works. Relationships born from scarcity, survival, or shared wounds can't survive in higher frequencies. When you start choosing from alignment instead of lack, those bonds strain. It doesn't mean those people are bad. It means the contract between you has expired. What once matched now mismatches. That's why so many awakenings come with seasons of isolation. Now feel the grief and relief intertwined. Grief because pieces of your identity were woven into those connections. Relief because you finally sense the freedom of living without shrinking to fit. You no longer have to bend yourself to keep others comfortable. You can breathe full. You can walk tall. That expansion may look like distance on the outside, but it feels like liberation on the inside. Here's the mechanic's identity is frequency in form. Each time you embody a new state, you upgrade the resonance of your relationships. Some harmonize, some fade, and some new ones arrive to match your octave. This isn't punishment, it's physics. The field reorganizes around the signal you emit, and as you continue to emit more coherence, only those who can meet you there will remain in your orbit. Imagine instead of clinging to the old, you welcome the new. Imagine saying, if this relationship dissolves, it means a new one more aligned is waiting. Suddenly, endings don't feel like rejections, they feel like redirections. And beginnings don't feel forced, they feel inevitable. Here's a practice when you notice a relationship shifting. Ask yourself 3 questions. 1. Does this connection expand or contract my energy? 2. Do I feel more myself or less when I'm with them? 3. If I met this person today, would I choose them again? Let your body answer honestly. Those answers reveal resonance faster than any rational analysis. When you apply this practice, your life simplifies. You stop wasting energy keeping expired contracts alive. You stop forcing conversations that don't want to flow. And you start noticing new people appearing, those who don't just tolerate your frequency, but amplify it. These are your resonance allies, the ones who meet you without masks, without pretense, without the need to dim. So the next move is simple: honor the shift without apology. When old circles fall away, let them. When new doors open, step through. When loneliness creeps in, remember it's temporary. It's not abandonment, it's transition. You're being cleared for connection that matches your next frequency, not your last. Identity is not static. It's a song that changes keys as you evolve. And as your identity shifts, so will your relationships. Let the ones that can harmonize stay. Let the ones that can't dissolve with grace. Because in the end, your truest connections are not built on history. They're built on resonance, and resonance never lies. You've seen how identity shifts, how relationships reorganize around your frequency. Now it's time to bring this wisdom down into the ground of your daily life. Because alignment isn't just about ideas you understand, it's about practices you embody. Without a protocol, frequency drifts. With a protocol, frequency holds. Notice this: the people who appear magnetic, the ones whose lives seem to flow effortlessly, aren't relying on random bursts of inspiration. They have rhythms. They've built micro habits that anchor their energy before the day can scatter it. Alignment is not something you stumble into by chance. It's something you return to by design. Think about how you start your mornings. If your first act is reaching for your phone, scrolling through noise, you've already tuned your antenna to static. But if your first act is tuning inward, even for 60 seconds, you set your signal before the world can hijack it. 1 minute of intentional breath or reflection can change the entire trajectory of a day. It's not about length, it's about coherence at the start. Consider how many micro moments of choice fill a single day. Before a meeting, during a commute, right before you respond to a message. These are alignment checkpoints. Without awareness, they slip by, and you run on autopilot. But with a protocol, you catch them, you pause, you breathe, you shift, and each shift prevents drift. Now feel what it would be like to live a day as an observer. Morning, you wake, breathe into coherence. Set one word as your frequency for the day. Commute or transition. You place your hand on your chest. Exhale slowly, and imagine tuning a dial. Pre-meeting, you ask yourself, what signal do I want to broadcast in this room? Evening, you sit still for 3 minutes, reviewing where you stayed aligned and where you slipped, and you reset with gratitude instead of judgment. This isn't fantasy, it's architecture. Here's the mechanics: frequency is cumulative. Small, consistent alignments compound like interest. Miss one and nothing collapses. But keep missing and drift multiplies. Keep aligning and coherence multiplies. That's why daily protocols matter. They make alignment inevitable rather than accidental. Imagine instead of waiting for breakthroughs, you design your day so breakthroughs become normal. You don't need 6-hour rituals. You need touch points. You need anchors. Think of them as tuning forks scattered through your schedule, each one resetting you back into signal. Here's a practice. Create a 24-hour loop called the alignment cycle. Morning check-in, 1 word, 1 breath. Midday reset, 3 breaths, 1 body scan. Pre-decision pause, ask. Expansion or contraction. Evening closure, write down 1 aligned choice you made and 1 adjustment you'll carry forward. Repeat daily, simple, repeatable, powerful. When you apply that cycle, coherence becomes second nature. Instead of being thrown by every challenge, you respond from center. Instead of feeling drained by constant noise, you conserve energy for what matters. Instead of drifting through weeks in fog, you navigate each day with clarity. Small, intentional practices build a life where alignment isn't rare, it's baseline. So the next move is simple. Build your protocol. Write it down. Treat it like non-negotiable training, because that's what it is. Spiritual athletes don't rise to the occasion. They train daily to maintain the frequency that calls occasions to them. Your daily practices are your training ground, and every time you follow them, you prove to yourself that alignment is not fragile, it's a lifestyle. Protocols don't cage you, they free you. They transform alignment from something you chase into something you embody. And when embodiment becomes habitual, coherence becomes inevitable. You've learned how to design daily rhythms that hold your frequency steady. But now comes a deeper truth. Your alignment is not just personal, it's collective. Every time you embody coherence, you're not only shaping your own reality, you're contributing to a field that shapes everyone else's. Notice this energy doesn't stop at your skin. The electromagnetic field of your heart radiates outward several feet in every direction. Your words, your emotions, your unspoken presence, they ripple into the space around you. People feel you before they hear you. That's not poetic, that's physics. When you enter a room in alignment, the room shifts. Think about how it feels to be around someone who radiates calm. You find yourself breathing easier, even if they don't speak. Or the way being around someone angry can infect your mood instantly. These are field effects. And when you start living coherently, you stop being unconsciously influenced and start consciously influencing. Not through force, through resonance. Consider how collective shifts have always happened. Rarely through argument, rarely through convincing. They happen because enough people embody a frequency until it tips the scale. Movements rise when coherence spreads. Awakening accelerates when resonance catches. And every time you choose alignment in your own life, you strengthen that collective field. You become a node, an anchor, a lighthouse. Now feel the responsibility in that. It's not about saving others or dragging anyone to your level. It's about consistency. Your task is not to argue people awake. Your task is to embody so clearly that others feel what's possible in your presence. You don't need to preach. You don't need to prove. Just by living coherently, you activate coherence in those near you. That's the quiet revolution. Here's the mechanics. Morphic fields amplify when enough individuals hold the same vibration. One tuning fork set to a note will eventually cause nearby forks to vibrate without touch. Humans are the same. When you live aligned, you become contagious not with noise, but with clarity. And clarity spreads faster than confusion once people sense the difference. Imagine instead of draining yourself, trying to fix others, you let your frequency do the work. You walk into spaces with presence instead of persuasion. You model trust instead of demanding it. You embody expansion instead of explaining it. People feel that, and without you forcing anything, something in them wakes up. Here's a practice. Create a social ritual of resonance. Before entering a room, pause. Ask, what energy am I broadcasting right now? Choose one word: calm, joy, certainty, clarity, and let it fill your breath. Then walk in. Don't announce it. Don't explain it. Just hold it. Watch how conversations shift, how faces soften, how opportunities appear. That's your field in motion. When you apply this consistently, you notice that you stop needing approval. You no longer waste energy debating skeptics. You realize that your presence is your argument, and those who are ready will resonate without you saying a word. Those who aren't will drift naturally. This is freedom. You stop carrying what isn't yours to carry. So the next move is simple: claim your responsibility without carrying their burden. Stop trying to rescue, stop trying to convince. Just live so aligned that others see their reflection in you. Some will awaken, some won't. That's not your job to manage. Your job is to hold the frequency steady, to keep broadcasting clarity in a world addicted to static. The collective field is shifting, with or without your participation. But when you participate consciously, the shift accelerates, and you realize your personal evolution was never only for you. It was always preparation for your role as a node in the network of awakening, a field builder, a frequency anchor, a quiet revolutionary. You've seen how your alignment shapes not just your life, but the collective field. Now it's time to take all this from concept into motion, because frequency is not just something you feel, it's something you practice daily in real time. This is your activation path for the next 30 days. Notice this: 30 days may sound ordinary, but it's the perfect container for transformation. Long enough to rewire habits, short enough to keep urgency high. Every day becomes a vote for your new identity, a chance to prove coherence in action. 30 days of clarity can undo years of drift. Think of it as a trajectory, not a checklist. In week 1, your focus is awareness. Carry a journal, track signals. Each time synchronicity shows up, write it down. Each time you feel a nudge, record it. Don't demand meaning right away, just collect. You're training your receiver to take signals seriously. Awareness sharpens the channel. In week 2, shift into embodiment. This is where breath becomes your anchor. Choose one practice: the observer breath. 3 slow inhales with longer exhales, and repeat it 3 times a day: morning, midday, evening. Simple, non-negotiable. Layer it with your coherence check. Speak a desire aloud and notice if your body feels lighter or heavier. No judgment, just calibration. By week 3, move into application. Now that you're tracking signals and practicing coherence, start acting on the clean impulses. Within 48 hours, follow through on one nudge each day. Call the person, write the draft, rest when urged, move when pulled. This is where collaboration with your future self becomes tangible. Each act anchors the frequency stronger. Week 4 is integration. Now you begin weaving your alignment into relationships and environments. Before every conversation, pause for one breath and set one word to broadcast: peace, clarity, joy, certainty. Let that word guide your tone. Notice how people respond differently. This is resonance in practice, shifting not just you, but the field around you. Consider how this protocol closes the gap between knowing and being. It's no longer about concepts you understand, but choices you embody. Each step, each breath, each decision becomes proof. Proof that you're not waiting for the future to arrive, you're collapsing the distance right now. Here's the mechanics: 30 days creates coherence through compounding. Small acts of alignment stack until they become identity. Identity shapes expectation. Expectation shapes reality. And by the end of this cycle, you don't just believe you're different, you are different. The shift is cellular. not just mental. Imagine instead of drifting through the month, you step into it with a sacred plan. Imagine watching the old patterns dissolve not through force, but through replacement. Each aligned act makes misaligned acts feel unnatural. Each coherent choice makes incoherence harder to tolerate. Transformation stops being something you wait for. It becomes something you practice into existence. Here's a practice to close the loop at night. Write down 3 things. 1 signal you noticed, 1 moment of coherence you created, and 1 action you'll take tomorrow. That's it. Simple, repeatable, powerful. By the end of 30 days, you'll have a record not of ideas, but of embodied proof. When you apply this, you'll discover something profound. Your life doesn't need massive external change to feel radically different. It only needs consistent internal alignment. The outer shifts will follow. But the inner shift is the true activation, because once you know how to live aligned for 30 days, you know how to live aligned forever. So the next move is simple: commit. Not someday, not when conditions are perfect. Now, 1 month of conscious alignment, 1 month of tuning instead of chasing, 1 month of letting your future self coach you home. This is your activation path. Step into it and watch the field respond. Pause for a moment. Breathe. Feel how far you've traveled through these words, not just ideas circling in your mind, but a vibration settling deeper into your body. You've walked through recognition, signals, coherence, identity, practice, and the field itself. And now, you stand at the close of 1 chapter and the quiet beginning of another. Notice this: nothing external had to change for you to feel the shift. It was already here. You've simply remembered. Remembered that what you desire isn't distant. Remembered that your frequency is the bridge. Remembered that your future self is already collaborating with you. This remembering is the true activation, not a grand performance, but a steady reclaiming of who you've always been. Think about what it means to carry this into tomorrow. It doesn't require perfection, it requires presence. 1 breath when you feel scattered, 1 pause before you speak, 1 decision made from coherence rather than fear. These are not small acts. They are the mechanics of transformation, the daily proof that your frequency is real and responsive. Now feel into the invitation that lingers here. You don't need to chase this state, you only need to choose it, again and again. And each time you do, you strengthen the alignment. You create ripples in the collective field. You become a quiet anchor in a noisy world. That is your responsibility, and that is your gift. So I'll leave you with this. Choose 1 word that captures the energy you're committing to embody from this moment forward. Let it be your signature, your anchor, your broadcast. Speak it, write it, breathe it, until it becomes the frequency you carry everywhere. This isn't just an ending, it's a threshold. You've stepped through it simply by listening with your whole being. And now, the work is simple. Live as if you already are the version of yourself your future self has been showing you, because you are.